What is up, fellow droogies, Megadeth fans, and fellow metalheads? Welcome to this special video. And why I say special is, well, the reason is because a friend of mine and I got talking, and for many of us, you may recall that a few years ago, Dave had actually said that, there was a thought that he had about, revisiting songs from the Megadeth catalog and sort of reworking them and perhaps compiling that into a new album of sorts. A pretty interesting take that some bands have done. Some have had success with that, some not so much, but I definitely think that Megadeth would. But avoiding the classic stuff, what I just got thinking about was, songs that, are a little more under the radar that only like really hardcore fans know about, or perhaps even for albums as such. And that's when my friend, really encouraged me and asked me to make this video, which was essentially looking at the 4 albums in Megadeth's discography, where they have about 16 albums. I think number 17 is going to be out soon, so pretty excited for that. But the 4 albums that are on most people's ranking, either here on YouTube or people you meet at concerts and so on, just general fans or even casual fans or hardcore fans, these are the 4 that usually rank in the sort of like the bottom rung. Now, I know many of you out there love these albums. I love all the albums. I think all the albums have something very cool to offer, and Megadeth is very diverse in its songwriting and its offerings. So what I wanted to do was to try and deep dive into songs that I think are really interesting and sometimes overlooked. And, could we, if we were to retcon this and perhaps go into an alternate universe and create a new timeline as such, and let's say supposing these albums, these 4 were not released, and if say those songs were to be created and they were to be put into an album form, what would that album be and what would it look like, and what would the song and track listing be, and so on. So hope this is going to be a fun exercise. I know I'm looking forward to it, so hope you guys enjoy. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, whether you agree, you disagree, you have a different take on this. Would love to know your thoughts. As always, thanks for the support. Let's get started. So the first thing is that I actually want to point to this. Now, in case some of you who are new are wondering what this is actually a greatest hits album, which was called Capital Punishment. And for those of us who know, way back after the Risk album, which is what you can see in the top left-hand corner, you can see the newer cover art. This was actually supposed to be the follow-up to Risk. This was meant to be called Capital Punishment, and the album cover you can see next to Risk, which is The World Needs a Hero. This was originally what it was meant to be called. So it would have probably had this album art with most of the tracks that were included in The World Needs a Hero. But because Megadeth was going through a major issue with their record label at the time, Capitol Records, they finally agreed to do a greatest hits, hand over 2 new songs, one of which was included in The World Needs a Hero, which I will get to. But these are the 2 new songs which were included in that compilation, of course, with all the great hits like, In My Darkest Hour, Holy Wars, Hangar 18, A Tout Le Monde, and so on, So I would say that these 2 songs are what we will pick up immediately. And as I mentioned before, Dread and the Fugitive Mind was finally included in The World Needs a Hero when it finally was released back in 2001. So we're going to take these 2 to start with. Let's see how things go from here. All right. Coming to many Megadeth fans and many fans of metal and so on, this is perhaps arguably the lowest ranking album in Megadeth's discography. Public Enemy #1, not to make a joke out of that, of another song that they have. But many fans disregard this album. Me personally, on the other hand, I do quite like this album. I think there are a lot of good songs that are dismissed too easily. And that's just my opinion. You guys don't have to agree with that. I think there's some great tracks out here. What I have over here, as I mentioned before, is that the Risk album, when a lot of the albums from the discography were reissued, the Risk album's artwork was changed. So a lot of us prefer this new art style, which was more in line with what the inner booklet was of the original pressing. And the original pressing's album cover is what you can see below, which is just sort of this wood finish with a changed Megadeth logo, which is a bit like a mousetrap of sorts. So when Dave in 2004 was, revisiting the discography and, sort of like remixing everything for new releases with bonus tracks and so on, he had the artwork change, which a lot of us prefer. Now, from this, you have a ton of great tracks, and it was a little tricky for me with some tracks because I do like some tracks a lot. Some tracks, I just, if I never heard them again, I wouldn't really care. So, what I've done is that out here, I have selected these ones, which I think that talking about my own personal taste, talking to fellow Megadeth fans, talking to other metalheads, and so on, we more or less have a consensus that these are the most standout tracks from the album, which we quite like. And I will just add over here, if there's one track that Megadeth should really revisit and rework and make more thrashy and build up again, is Crush Him. I'm sure many of you guessed that, but if they were to combine Enter the Arena, which I think is a far better title than Crush Him, and just make a song out of that and revisit it, I think it would, do phenomenal right now, especially since the band is obviously not really trying to chase that radio-friendly thing as they were in the late 90s, and of course, the musical landscape was so different. So in some ways, you can't blame them, but in some ways, well, I personally liked the track at the time when it came out, but again, it's just a personal opinion, guys. Let me know what you guys think as well. All right, so that's Risk. Let's go to the next one. The World Needs a Hero. And I've got to admit here, guys, I know this album has a huge fan following. For me personally, this is my least favorite Megadeth album. Sorry, least favorite Megadeth album. I know that sounds like a little blasphemous to some of you guys, where you might say, oh my god, how could you say that? But hear me out. Why do I dislike it? A few things is that I hate the artwork. To me, this is the one album with the artwork I just hate. Now, is it because it's so horror themed? No, it's just because it sucks. Okay, that's just my personal opinion. It just sucks. It just, there was no effort made into this. There's more thought put into a lot of other album covers, but there is one other album cover besides this one, which I dislike even more now. But for the longest time, this was The World Needs a Hero's album art I hated. I felt the songs were not fully fleshed out enough. I felt that there was a bit of a rush job on some, and some songs, some parts of the songs, the riffs were awesome. There was a lot of wasted potential in this album. That's what I felt, just to summarize. And the album art, which I was just mentioning, is Super Collider. I think that sucks even more than this. So that's just my take. But there are some gem tracks on here which I want to call out, and I just want to say that I'm going to highlight these. I think that these are the ones that make a lot of sense. They really stand out in a pretty good way, and as I mentioned over there, Dread and the Fugitive Mind is what I'd selected earlier, but going to run with that. So these are the ones I think that would make sense to pull from here. Let's then jump into the next album, which is 13. So 13, arguably of the of these four albums, is the more popular one. It's probably got a larger following with with Megadeth fan base and other metal guys and so on. I know a lot of guys who prefer this and have it much higher up in their ranking. But generally, I'm again just going by consensus as to what I've seen. You guys let me know what you think as well. This album, obviously of the four, it's got my favorite album art, and I think that a lot of tracks out here are really good. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pulling this. Now, one thing I will point out here is that for a lot of long-term Megadeth fans, we know this, but for newer guys, there are a few songs out here which have been released before in some form or the other. So when this album came out, it didn't really feel like a very new one. It sort of felt like it was new, but it was a bit old. And obviously for a lot of us, I mean, much respect to Sean Drover and Chris Broderick, but songs like New World Order, which we know had the legendary and the classic lineup of Marty Friedman on guitar and Nick Menza, God rest his soul, on drums. So that was New World Order, which came out around the time, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, which was for Rust in Peace. So this is a good version of that, but I kind of prefer the earlier version, which we all heard. There's obviously Black Swan, which was from United Abominations, which they reworked out here. Then there's Millennium, of the Blind. Sorry about that. Millennium of the Blind. And Deadly Nightshade was a riff that David Ellefson mentioned that had been lying around for a long time. So there's a lot of rework of older songs and older tracks that have been sitting there, some which were released, some which were not. But the album as such, even Sudden Death, if I'm not wrong, came on the Guitar Hero video game. So a lot of us had heard that. Overall, it's good, but you get it. It wasn't exactly 100% fresh, 100% new, but it was at the same time, it had its moments. So I'm picking these. Again, guys, you don't have to agree with me on everything I'm saying out here. I'd love to know what you guys think. Okay, so let's get to the final one, which is Super Collider. Now, there's always a tussle between Megadeth fans as to which is worse, Risk or Super Collider. I personally think Risk has a slightly stronger structure to it, even in terms of songs. Now, a lot of you guys may not agree, but do I think Super Collider is a bad album? No, I don't think it's a bad album. I think it has its moments also. I think it does, hold its ground in certain areas. And having said so, I'm going to actually pick these tracks, to be the ones that I'm going to pull from here. But there are good moments on this. Like I think Dance in the Rain has, parts which are very good. I think that Burn also could be included in that. Don't Turn Your Back has a great riff that starts things off, and then it kind of goes downhill, once the verse kicks in. Sorry, once the verse kicks in. So, all in all, I would actually pull this. So, when we summarize, all the tracks that I've pulled from here, you get about 23 tracks roughly. And that's a lot. That's obviously a lot. Now, one thing which which I thought of doing was that Megadeth usually has albums that are about say 11 or 12 tracks in length, which they include and so on. And obviously 13 was an exception, had 13 tracks, which was kind of a cool idea. Also giving the name of the album, but I was just trying to see, could we whittle this down a little bit more? Could we cut it down a bit more to make it into what might be a more comprehensive album? Just like, trying to see where we could keep the tightest tracks, the ones which are most popular with the Megadeth fan base and so on, myself included, my own personal favorites and so on. So finally, drum roll. Okay, that was a horrible drum roll. I'm sorry. But anyway, I would actually whittle it down to this. So these would be the 15 that I would actually pick as being the definitive, strongest tracks that we could summarize from all four of these albums. And having said so, I would then come across to what would be the artwork. Would I pick one of the four that's out here? Well, I would be tempted to pick 13, but I'm actually going to point to item number 4, which was Super Collider. No, not the front artwork, guys, don't panic. I would actually point to the back, and that's this. And I think that this was excellent artwork that was wasted. Why was this not the front album cover? Why was this not used? It's on the back, if I'm not wrong, with the CD, where you can see that sort of robot Vic, standing out there. And I think in the inner booklet you could see the whole spread with the regular Vic, running away with that canister in his left hand. And I think that this would be phenomenal art to actually use. So this is the artwork. That's the final track listing. So which then begs the question, if this was to have an album title, what would it be? And I honestly think that maybe I would go with this, Dread and the Fugitive Mind. Why? Because maybe some of you guys might have guessed that obviously Vic is running away from the robot, so a bit of a fugitive with the canister, and I just thought, okay, wow, maybe that's just sheer coincidence, but hey, it would sound like a pretty cool album title. So Megadeth, Dread and the Fugitive Mind would probably be with what I would go with. This would be the track listing. Number 1, Kill the King. Number 2, Kingmaker. Number 3, the cover by Thin Lizzy, which is called Sweat, really kick-ass. Number 4, Sudden Death. Number 5, Dread and the Fugitive Mind, which would hypothetically be the title track. Number 6, A Thousand Times Goodbye. Number 7, Prince of Darkness. Number 8, Return to Hango. Number 9, I'll Be There. Number 10, Never Dead. Number 11, Black Swan. Number 12, Deadly Nightshade. Number 13, Millennium of the Blind. Finally got it right. 14, Forget to Remember. And 15, Disconnect. So that would be the track listing. That's the summary overall. But who scores highest? Well, I think Risk has about 2 tracks in the final inclusion. Super Collider has 2 as well. No, 3. 3 in fact. 3 as well. The World Needs a Hero has 4, but if you count Kill the King, which was written around the recording sessions of World Needs a Hero, you could say 5, but it's 4, which was on the final album that came out. 13 scores 5 hits, so 13 actually is kind of the winner out here, which has the most dominance in this track listing that I've put together. So that's it, guys. That's what I would think would be the perfect album in an alternative timeline. If you were to sort of take the 4 albums that you see over here and put together a track listing, and this would be the sequencing which I think would work best for those songs. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a better view on this? Do you have a different view on this? Do you think that this would be something that you'd be excited about if Dave was to actually go back and revisit older songs and was to sort of create a new track listing? Would this be what you would agree with and you'd want the band to do? Let me know what you think. As always, thank you so much for all of your support. Thanks for listening in. I do look forward to talking to all of you soon. Much love, take care, and rock on, guys. We'll see you soon.